The stage, Piyush, come and join me. Right, take a seat.
Thank you.
Oh, it's brilliant to have Piyush with us. You've travelled from not so far away. Where have you come from tonight?
So, good evening, everybody. I've come from Cambridge. 2 hours this evening in the rush hour, which is fine.
Oh wow, so it's 2 hours. Oh wow, cool. Yeah, wow, it's a long time in travel. So Piyush, we know that you're an ENT surgeon, bit of an expert in the throat and the neck. I remember reading on your website a few years ago, on a hospital website, that it said that you are a practicing medicine. Now, when you made your first cut as a surgeon, I guess, were you practicing medicine there, or were you a bit more skilled at that?
Yeah, so my very first cut was when I was what we call a house officer, very junior doctor. But you're never alone. You always there with your boss and others. So yes, I knew what I was doing, I think.
Yeah, good.
So it was fine.
And was it a successful operation?
Yes, it was fine. Patient survived, which is amazing.
Oh wow! And what did you give us a bit of a flavour of what did you actually have to do surgery wise? So we can understand the kind of things you do as a surgeon.
So I'm a head and neck cancer surgeon. Worked at Addenbrooke's Hospital, Cambridge for 30 years. So I would treat people with malignancies, cancers of the head and the neck. So things like, for example, thyroid cancer, salivary gland cancers, throat cancers, cancers of the esophagus, sinuses, everything above the collarbone, but not the brain. If the tumor extended into the brain, I would work with a neurosurgeon. We'd do it together. He'd go from the top, I'd go from the bottom. But yeah, everything, all cancers around here.
Yeah. And you can be in surgery quite a long time. What's the kind of shortest amount of time to the longest amount of time that you've been involved in? So what's the quickest and the longest?
Yes, so short one will be about 2 hours. A long one will be all day.
Wow. How do you cope with all day? Do you have regular breaks, or what happens?
Yeah, you have a bit of a break in the middle, but normally you're working in teams as well. So for example, I would do a resection, and sorry to use medical language, but we would leave quite a defect in the body, in area, and that needs to be reconstructed again. So we'll work with a plastic surgeon who would then use tissues from elsewhere in the body, from the arm, the thigh, or the hip, and transfer bone and muscle and skin to reconstruct as such. So the whole process, you can imagine, that would take 10 or 12 hours as such altogether. So yeah.
Wow. And when you're doing the surgery and before, is there like an affinity with the patients you're working with, or do you have to go into robot in the zone? I've got to do surgical mode. And how does it work? Do you kind of share an affinity with the patient as you come to operate on them?
Yes. So my job involves 3 different aspects. I would first see a patient in the outpatient, in the clinic, where I would meet them, often meet the family as well. I'd get to know them, and there is obviously an affinity. You get to know the patients, and there is an empathy, whatever. Then the next bit of it is surgery, which is very technical, and the third part is seeing them afterwards. Initially through the recovery and the wards and everything, but then probably over the next 5 years as surveillance, as we just make sure the tumor is not coming back at all. So patients become family.
Yeah.
We get to know them over 5 years, and but I think your question was more about the surgery itself. There, you just have to be a technical exercise. It's one of the reasons why the GMC doesn't allow surgeons like me to operate on family members, because it's very hard then to be technical when it's one of your loved ones there.
Yeah.
So, but you just have to be in a particular zone where you're just thinking about the work you're doing without thinking too much emotionally about the family and everything else. So, yeah. Of course, you can never separate it, and everything you're doing, you're always thinking, about the patient, but there is a difference between the two.
Wow, cool. Wow, incredible stuff. So, you haven't always been
Not
a
as
surgeon.
incredible as
Go on.
I see here on Sunday, you're doing a wrestling match. Is that right? Does that mean you come in a wrestling gear?
Yeah, there's a lady who's professor and expert in wrestling, so I might challenge her. See
I
what
could
her
never
goes.
do that.
I think I heard today actually they're bringing sumo wrestling
Yes,
to,
they are.
to the UK.
It's on at the moment. Well, it started already.
It has already.
The Royal Albert Hall.
Have you watched some of it already?
No, I'm not a fan. But
You could be examining as they
Yes.
do it. Yeah. Okay, so you obviously haven't always been a surgeon. Where did it all start? Where were you born? Where were you raised?
yes, so I was born in Africa. Any Africans here?
Really?
Yeah, hello. Born in a tiny village called Yala in Kenya. There's a lake in Kenya called Lake Victoria, a big town there called Kisumu, the third largest town in Nairobi. There's Nairobi, Mombasa, and then Kisumu. If you just went north of Kisumu, about 26 miles, quite high up because of the Rift Valley, and there's a tiny village there when I was growing up called Yala. So I grew up there. So I grew up there speaking Swahili, which is the African language, and Gujarati, which is what my ethnic Indian language is as well.
So you were bilingual, obviously now trilingual. Do you speak any other languages as well?
But I wouldn't say O-level French counts really, does it?
Yeah,
No.
oh God, I've got GCSE in German, so it counts. Yeah, let's say it counts. Great.
Yeah.
So, and what did your parents do there?
Yeah, so my dad grew sugarcane, and the sugarcane was then, he grew sugarcane and they made raw sugar called jaggery. So big chunks of raw sugar basically. And then this was used basically to make alcohol. People would use this and make your local brew and a spirit. That's what they used that for. And a bit of it was used for food as well. Mum worked in a shop in this tiny village. This village, by the way, was absolutely tiny. So it was a gravel road, a few houses on either side, and nothing else. So no running water, no electricity. Best of all, no school kids. No, great. So Mum had a shop there, and she would I would help Mum in the shop, and Dad would, as I said, had the sugarcane plantation and thing.
So was it the only shop in the village?
No, there were some others, but she was one of them.
Yeah. Oh, great. And so what? No score here. So what did you spend your days doing as a youngster?
Yeah. So a lot of the time was in the shop helping Mum, because Dad was away, and I just had to help Mum in the shop. So a lot of time was that. There's some more people at the door. Should we ask them to come in?
Oh yeah, please.
There's plenty of chairs here. Do come in.
I can't see them. Mate.
Please come in.
Yeah, come in. Grab a seat.
There's lovely chairs over here, right in the front.
Great.
Especially for you. Welcome.
Good evening.
Yeah, so I did that. I played with the African kids, which was great. You would just walk around and, it was lovely, sunny, beautiful, yeah.
But I guess they're in that kind of family environment, were there many other people who were practicing the same kind of religion as your family as well? Because do you want to share a bit about what your religious beliefs or practices were at that stage?
Yes. So I grew up in a Hindu household. So my parents were Hindus. So I grew up as a Hindu. So all Hindu people, basically what they would do, they would have a little shrine in the house. So every day you would light a little flame on the shrine to the idols, and you would do a little chant. So that would be a daily thing, as a family thing. And once a week, there were some other Indians there as well. So once a week on a Saturday, they would gather together and have a bit more of a social gathering, also, but quite religious as well. So I grew up as a Hindu in that family. Yeah.
So I guess that was normality for you. You didn't kind of question if it was just the way things were.
Yeah, I was born into a Hindu family, and I was a Hindu, and proud to be so.
Yeah. And you said you'd have like these little lights to these idols or gods. What were they representing? Particular things, or did you get to choose which ones? How did that work?
So I'm not sure if people know about Hinduism or not. If you want to know more, please come and ask questions. But as you may know, there are not just hundreds and thousands, but millions of gods, basically. And some families then choose which particular ones They actually, each one, and each one represents a particular aspect of religion. You can choose and do that. So I think from memory we had 3 different ones. Shiva was one of them, Krishna was one of them, and the Hanuman is the elephant person. The one with the monkey head was there, and sometimes the elephant god was there as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so that was your childhood there, and it was the lovely weather and everything. All that was to go. How come you ended up moving away from this kind of idyllic kind of lifestyle to somewhere else?
Just to finish on the Hinduism. So Paul mentioned the book Brahmin Reborn. So as you also know, Hinduism has got a caste system. So Brahmins are the religious caste. They are the top caste. So I'm from a Brahmin family. So my surname Jani is a derivation from Gnani, which means the Gna of Gnostics, of knowledgeable. So they were the people who would read Sanskrit, and all Hindu religion is chants are in Sanskrit. My name itself, Piyush, is also a Sanskrit name.
Okay.
That's my kind of religion.
So other Hindus, when they hear your surname, they would know exactly straight away which caste you're from.
Absolutely, straight away you would know where you fit in, that sort of thing.
Wow.
So life was carried on. Then when I was 13, things began to be a bit unstable in Kenya. Uganda was going through a bad time. There was a gentleman in Uganda called Idi Amin, who overnight gave people 3 months to leave Uganda, but the Asians, that is, and people just had to leave with just clothes and nothing else. All the possessions and money had to be left behind, and they came here. And Kenya went through not as overt as that, but similar to that. There were lots of pressures, and my parents were also forced to leave that as well. And they came here with 5 children.
Wow.
And basically just a suitcase full of clothes, and that's all.
Wow. And where did you end up where did you end up living to start with?
Yeah, so we moved first to Buckinghamshire.
Yeah.
A village there called Westbury. The reason why we went there is, some of you may know, if you go to Tesco's or Sainsbury's, if you want to buy Indian pickle, you buy Patak's Indian pickle. Have you done it? Familiar with that?
Yeah.
So they are distant family relatives.
Oh, wow.
So because that's the only people Mum and Dad knew, they went and then worked with them for a couple of years before moving up north to near Manchester.
Yeah, and was it Oldham? I heard you talk about
Oldham,
it. It was quite interesting.
Mouldy Oldham.
You could call it Moldham or Coldham maybe.
I'll tell you the thing about Oldham. So Oldham, not a particularly nice place in those days, really not. So we had an essay once to write to school. The best thing about Oldham is the M62 out of it, ?
Discuss. Wow, lovely. I used to live up in Manchester way, and my first football manager, this is a completely irrelevant fact, but he was actually from Oldham.
Okay.
Called Kevin Bottom.
Lots of people know now. So my daughter just finished working for the BBC. She is a producer of science programs, working with Professor Brian Cox.
Wow.
He came from Oldham.
There you go.
But he went to the posh school.
Good. So on the education front, you've not been in school all this time, so you didn't start school until you were 13. I guess first question, do your kind of patients know that you didn't start school till you were 13?
Nor did they know that I didn't speak English at that time.
So you didn't speak English?
I just spoke Swahili and Gujarati, no English and no school.
Wow, cool. That must have been very tough coming to this country. What was the culture shock like for you? There must have been some kind of culture shock.
It was difficult. So I went to school where there were only 2 people who were not white, and there's only one of them who couldn't speak English and hadn't been to school before. So you can imagine in that situation, it can be quite cruel, and it was difficult. It wasn't easy, and also some of the practical things were just bizarre. As everybody knows, food tastes best with your fingers. But you guys in here use knives and forks. So I went to school the first day, and there was a meal there. I was using these knives and forks. I didn't know how to hold them, and I had to use a fork to eat peas.
Oh, wow.
And I was hungry that lunchtime, and I stayed hungry all day.
Oh, I'm not surprised.
So things like that, practical things like that, and just managing, the day-to-day stuff. But school was, from that point of view, it was a challenge.
Would you recommend not going to school until you're 13? Is that a
good
life lesson for these guys?
My life shows that actually it's a complete waste of time before 13.
Oh, yeah. Guys, make a note of that for your teachers.
Just give it up and then start at 13, have fun, and then, you can do whatever you want. I did.
Brilliant. So school was sadly quite tough in terms of relationships and the way people treated you.
You got better as I went along, but yeah.
Okay, good. And so how would you kind of cope with that? What were your coping mechanisms? Because obviously you did quite well at school.
I think I could have gone two ways. So the first thing, in Buckinghamshire, there's two education systems. There is what they used to call secondary modern and the grammar schools. I had to go to the secondary modern because I hadn't been to school. But then my father, for some reason, thought that was a wrong school for me. And he pestered until they got me transferred to the grammar school. Initially for a term, on probation, but I didn't look back. But I think what happened was that I could have gone two ways. I could have just given up and gone back to the secondary modern. But all the difficulties actually made me even more determined. I was thought to be different and stupid and didn't know anything and almost subhuman, and I thought, I will show them. I was driven then actually. And then so I then did my on those days O levels. O levels are the same as GCSEs nowadays. Okay, at the same time as everybody else, so I caught up.
Wow, that's it's really quick. 3 years and you're there with everyone else. And obviously you did very, very well because you've then gone on to become a dentist first of all. Was that right?
Yes, that's right. So initially after that I didn't know what to do, but I ended up doing dentistry, and then I did what's called maxillofacial, which means surgery of the jaws, upper and lower jaws. So if, for example, you have a car crash, you smash the jaws, you go to maxillofacial surgeon. If you need difficult wisdom tooth extracted, or if the jaw is misshapen, for example, you need to reshape it to, if the lower jaw is too big or small, all that sort of stuff around here. That's what I did.
Wow.
So I was doing that I never worked as a dentist in a dental practice, but after dentistry, that's what I went into initially.
So how many years of study was that?
So dentistry was 4.5 years, and then after that I worked for 2 years in maxillofacial.
Great, wow. So you're doing that, and university, was it a good time as well? You were quite good at certain sports, I believe.
I loved it. I absolutely loved university. I was able academically, so that was an easy part. I loved sport. I played cricket and hockey, and I captained my university at both those. I had lots of friends, and it was I loved it. Really.
Great. Were you an all-rounder? How do you bowl?
So I'm sort of medium pace, bat number 5. So I'm a bit of all-rounder.
Solid all-rounder. I like that. Did you swing the ball a bit as well? A little bit, not like you do. Though. I did a bit. But that sounds really good.
Yeah.
So great. You were great at sport. You were doing really well academically, flying there. But then you also went to study medicine as well. Was that afterwards?
Yes, that was afterwards. That's 2 years later.
Yeah.
So I 2 years later, I was an amazing story again. I'd only been a Christian about 3 or 4 months. I became a Christian in 1982, in February, and my job was coming to an end. I wanted to apply for a new job, and I went to this particular job, which was a great job. And in those days you had to go and see the people, and it was almost arranged that you would get the job. It wasn't fair. So my boss knew the other boss, and I went to see them and look around. They said, "Oh, of course, yes, just the person. The job is yours. You can come." But on the interview day, I didn't get it, and I'd only been a Christian just 3 months or so. I said, I didn't know what to make of all this. And life was a bit dark. I didn't know what was going on. But 6 weeks later, I had a phone call from a hospital asking me to invite for medicine rather than me applying for medicine.
Wow.
And so this was Guy's Hospital. They said, would you like to study medicine? Please, if you want to, please come for an interview. And normally competition, as you know, is one place on 30, 40 applicants applying. So it was amazing how that happened.
Great. And we want to find out a bit about how you became a Christian. So if we backtrack.
That was after dentistry and but before I did medicine.
Great. And so did you have, this is before you became a Christian, did you, as growing up, did you have much kind of thought about Christianity? Do you have any idea about it? Did you have any opinions about it much?
Any opinions I had were negative, not positive. I didn't know anything at all. I never had the Bible. I never read the Bible as such at all. But nothing at all like that.
And things got quite interesting when you were working and you met your first kind of real Christian before you. Do you want to tell us a bit about your colleague who was a Christian?
So I was working, as I said, as a maxillofacial surgeon. The level was what we call SHO, Senior House Officer. And there were two of us, the other person and myself, working as SHOs. So we provided what was called 24/7 cover. So in the daytime, between 8 to 5, we would both be working. Then in the evening, one of us would be on call. So we'd actually provide 24/7 cover throughout the week, all the way. So when you're working so intensively together, you get to know each other. And what I haven't told you yet, the other person was a girl. So you do get to know each other. And you become friends. Perhaps you might become more than friends. And that's what happened. And she was a Christian.
Right.
And we began to go out together.
Did she talk to you at all about her Christian beliefs?
Not much. I knew she was a Christian. How she lived spoke far more than if she said anything. Because if she said anything, I perhaps wouldn't have listened either. And I would have been dismissive. But she was so different from what I was like. Right. She had an integrity about her. And I think the word I would use, she had a transparency about her. Okay. By that I mean, it really showed me up about where I was. Because if you had seen me at that time, you'd have seen this young, successful young surgeon, lots of friends, captain of his sports teams, even had a new car.
Brilliant.
It's amazing how cars at that age are so important, I did my postgrad exams. The pass rate in postgrad exams was 7%. People took it time and again. I did mine the first time. So you've seen this outwardly very successful person. But that was a facade. Inside, I was really churned up. And what she showed me, though, when you saw her, you could just see through and through. What she was on the inside and the outside was all there. And for me, I had my lovely bits on the outside and hidden bits on the inside. And I think you would have thought I was cocky and arrogant when you met me at that time. Right. I was just full of myself,
Right. But something quite significant happened which caused that to be reevaluated and changed somewhat.
So this is where it gets interesting, and sadly, very sad as well. So one thing I haven't told you is that this Christian girl, I haven't told you, and I hadn't told her either, which is this fact that actually I already had a girlfriend when I met her. So somehow I'd acquired two girlfriends at the same time.
Somehow. Wow.
I was two-timing them.
Sure. So how did that pan out?
I think we laugh a bit, but actually it was a terrible evening. It was really dreadful. So what happened was one day, every Friday evening, this Christian girl and I would get together, have a meal, a glass of wine, and end of a busy week, we would just just enjoy a meal together. So one Friday evening, I was again invited for this meal, and I went along, thinking, oh, this would be great. And when I went there, they were both there.
Ouch.
I was found out. I was rumbled. Not one of my favourite evenings.
No. So what happened on the obviously you were found out, but what did they say?
So,
what did you say?
So it was, Martin, it was dreadful. It was full of tears, anger, recrimination. Piyush, how could you have done this? And it was a dreadful evening. So of course I went home that night, and it was I couldn't sleep that night. I really couldn't sleep. Just kept churning in my head what I'd done. What made things even worse next day was that a Christian girl phoned me up and said, Piyush, we need to be professional because we need to continue working together, and I forgive you.
Wow.
And she did that to console me and to make me feel better, but actually it made me feel even more dreadful. How could somebody forgive me when I just done this? It made me feel even more wretched than I already felt. And then after that, what happened was that I just began to see more and more behind this facade, which was just so dreadful and horrible. And all the things I valued, academia, sports, achievements, I was a pretty good surgeon, friends, meant nothing. I began to dislike myself. I'd look in the mirror and I wanted to be somebody else. I just didn't like it. So I thought I'll be religious because she was so lovely, and it was because of her religion that she was so lovely. So I thought I'll be religious. So I went back to my Hinduism, and I thought I'll really work hard at being a good Hindu. But sadly, it made me feel even more wretched. The reason being, can I carry on?
Yeah, please do, yeah.
Reason being, there is a system in Hinduism called the karma system. Whatever you do, there's a reaction against it. If I do good, good is done back to you. If I do bad, bad is done back to me, either in this life or the next life. There's a cycle of reincarnation. And what I come back in my next life depends on how I live this life. And Martin, behind that facade, which has come down already by now, was a lot of karma. It was, and how do I ever pay for this karma? It was the mess I'd made. So Hinduism, rather than helping, made it much worse.
So it just added to the guilt and the shame.
Added to the wretchedness and the guilt and everything. Yeah.
Cool. So you were desperately trying to get some kind of way out of this pit you're in. Hinduism wasn't providing the answers. Did you find an answer?
Yeah. So this is at this point, God, who made the earth, intervened. So I was invited to not just one church, but two particular churches. So I'd never been to church before. So in the morning I'd go to church, an FIEC church in East London. In the evening I'd go to a church called All Souls Church in middle of London and go there. Both quite drives. One was 9 miles, one was 13 miles. But I was desperate. I'd never read the Bible, and I was given a Bible to read. It was an easy version to read, what used to be called the Good News version. But even then, I could read the words, I could see what they're saying, but I didn't understand what he was saying. I'd go to church, and often it was just a blank. I didn't even know what people did in church, So it
was quite alien, because interesting, on Monday night we interviewed a couple who went to All Souls Langham Place, and they're completely outsiders. And then they were like, oh wow, this is incredible. But that wasn't quite your experience.
No, I thought I would sit in the corner somewhere, hidden, So when people stood up, I would stand up. When people sat down, I would sit down. When they opened the Bible, there was so much assumed knowledge and background knowledge. I had nothing. So for me, it was difficult to understand. But then we come to this particular Sunday. It's this Sunday morning service. There would have been some readings there. I have no idea what the readings were. There would have been some prayers and hymns. I don't know what they were. There would have been a sermon. Again, I can't remember. Except I do remember it would have been almost shouted in passion, because that's what the person was, the pastor was so, he was almost shouted out his sermons, really. And I just, when people stood up to sing, I couldn't sing, so I would just read the words. Then that Sunday morning, the last hymn, the very last hymn, was a hymn which spoke to me like no other hymn previously or even now. Some of you may know the hymn. It's called "Tell Out My Soul the Greatness of the Lord," written by one Timothy Dudley Smith, who was the pastor bishop of Thetford. So again, the first verse talks about unnumbered blessings. Well, what are these? What are these blessings we're meant to be singing about? The second verse talks about the deeds His mighty arm has done. No idea what they were. So that would be the common experience with all the hymns. I just,
it's like an alien language.
Completely, the third verse has a line in it that spoke profoundly to me. Very simple line. It simply said, proud hearts, even now I get emotional. It said, proud hearts and stubborn wills are put to flight. But I could understand that. Proud hearts and stubborn wills are put to flight. And this proud young man realized that he is actually very proud. He's very stubborn. So I left church that afternoon, just that line ringing in my head. Proud hearts and stubborn wills are put to flight. So that evening I went to All Souls. Again, as I said, my experience in church would be I would be hiding in a corner, anonymous, and it's a big church. But that evening, it was profoundly different. It's as if the person giving the talk was speaking to nobody else but me. And why is he picking me tonight? That sort of thing. At that time, I was also, again, because I was wanted to find out more, I used to go to a course where you could question the Christian faith. I presume this church would run a similar sort of thing here, with a cup of coffee in one hand, Bible in the other hand. I could ask anything I wanted to.
And it was called Agnostics Anonymous.
Agnostics Anonymous, AA.
For emergency service as well, or something else as well.
Absolutely, it was called that, and I went there as a very angry young man. Angry for two reasons. Angry because I was just inwardly so wretched. Angry because they seemed to dismiss my Hinduism. They're saying there's only one way to God. And so myself, Hindus, my culture was just being Muslim. And angry because every time I asked a question, they would refer to this book, the Bible, which I'd never known, and that irritated me as well as such. But the Monday, I would go to the course on Monday. The Monday, after that Sunday, Tell Out My Soul, Proud Hearts, Stubborn Wills Put to Flight, that very next Monday, they were talking about something called the cross. I had no idea what the cross was. It was explained to me, though, that on that wooden cross, where Jesus died, He died for me. And they would have said lots more to me, but again, 90% just went over my head, except this bit, that He died so that my karma could be wiped away. I could be forgiven. And this is somebody who disliked himself so much because of the guilt and everything within me, all the things I'd done. And here, so I don't normally cry, but I did cry that night. And a month ago, the chap who led that course, I met him for lunch in Oxford, which was amazing.
Wow. Cool.
We had a really first.
So over 40 years later.
Yeah. So it was great. Wow. Roger Simpson.
Wow.
So that night I went home, and for the first time, I knelt by my bed and prayed to the Lord Jesus. Very simple prayer, just saying, please forgive me for the mess that made of my life. Please help me to live with you as my Lord. and please help me day by day to walk with you. You know, he was mumbled out. He wasn't coherent. I didn't know much about Christian faith, except I did know that here was a place where my past sins, karmas could be wiped away, and I could start afresh. That's all I basically knew.
Wow.
And that was February 23rd, 1982, on a cold Monday evening.
Brilliant. So that night you trusted Jesus, you asked
Yeah.
him for forgiveness
Yeah.
and to wipe away what you'd done. Yeah, that's amazing. And was there, because you've been talking about the pride and the stubbornness, was there an immediate change? Were there some changes that you could see, that other people could see, following your turning to Christ?
But I was getting even more convicted by all the things I'd done, you know. So I'll spill the beans, shall I?
Yeah, go for it.
So when I got that job, one of the things they asked me in the interview with that job was, Piyush, because the job was between 3 hospitals, are you able to drive? And I said, of course I can drive. Yes, I can drive. But I couldn't. It was a lie.
Wow.
And I thought, well, actually, what I'll do, I'll just take taxis initially between the hospitals, learn quickly with my driving test, and then nobody would know.
Yeah.
This was before I was a Christian. So when I became a follower of Jesus, that lie just convicted me, and I got this job on false pretenses. I need to do something about this. And again, it was churning me up. So I had to go, and I thought, well, I will find out every person on the interview panel, and I will then go and confess.
Wow.
And tell them. And you can imagine, you know, the thought of me, a junior surgeon, speaking to the consultants, I was absolutely petrified about doing it. But I did.
Wow.
And they just laughed.
So you kept your job.
I kept my job.
Yeah.
And
But there is an honesty that came about and humility.
and something was happening in my life, and I began to, you know, the only way you can keep 2 relationships going at the same time, is you tell a lie, then you tell a lie to cover it up, and you lie after lie after lie, and before you know it, you're full of deceit. And I began to hate lying. And I knew I'd lied with that job, and I needed to fix it. So I knew that God was doing something to my heart.
Wow.
My heart was slowly being changed from the inside, which Hinduism could never do.
Wow. So on that note, time's coming drawing to a close, but on the Hinduism kind of note, obviously your family and no doubt friends as well were Hindu. How did they react, and how do you now view them now you're a Christian?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so my family, sadly, was very difficult initially. It was traumatic. My sister accused me of being selfish because we were a close-knit family, and she thought I was ignoring my family and just doing what I wanted. But of course I wasn't. I didn't want to become a Christian because I knew the family would be so impacted that I could see no other way.
Yeah.
You know, that was where I was. My mother was again so angry. She went to bed for a whole week, didn't eat or drink, as if she wanted to die. You can imagine the emotional turmoil of that. And it was terrible. But it didn't stay like that. Over the years, my parents realized that I loved them far more as a Christian than I ever did as a Hindu. In fact, when my parents, right at the end of their lives, they were dying and getting old, I, as a Christian son, although I'm not the eldest gets all the responsibilities. I was given responsibilities for looking after the POA and the finances and looking after them. And my sister wonderfully became a Christian.
Oh.
And my other siblings, I continue to pray for them.
Yeah.
They are not yet Christians.
Yeah. Amazing. And it's been great to hear all of what you've been saying there. I guess one of the questions we're asking everyone at the end of each evening is what does Jesus mean to you now? Because obviously 40 years or plus has elapsed since you came to know Jesus. What does Jesus mean to you today in 2025?
Yeah. I could say so much. I'm trying to think
Yeah,
what
yeah.
to say.
It's
what
all right,
to
take
say.
your time, take your
Yeah.
time.
I have a habit every morning, as many people here would do, to just go to the Bible and pray and read the Bible. Can I just have a quick look and see what I read
please,
this morning?
no, absolutely. Yeah.
Because I read a psalm this morning, and I just thought, yeah, so wonderful. So let me just pick out a couple of sentences from there. So, if you're not familiar with the Bible, there's a particular group of songs inside called the Psalms, which is the songbook basically of the Bible. And morning by morning, I read a psalm and then something else. So, just listen to some of these words. They're just amazingly precious. The psalm is written by a chap called David. He's King David. He says, he talks about God. That God is my rock and salvation. By rock he means a stability and a permanence. Jesus himself used the word that if you build your house on the rock, the storms of life, and can I say every person in this room will have storms of life. You either had them, or you're going through them, or you will have them. The storms of life will never shake you. That stability, that permanence on that rock. And he says, you are my rock. You are my salvation. Salvation means what I learned in 1982. That on that cross, my karmas were wiped clean. He goes on, that he is my fortress. There's a lovely line I also read this morning. It says this, for you have been my help. But in the original, it doesn't say that. It says it's much stronger. So you have been such a help to me. Can I say, I absolutely can vouch that. God has been incredibly helpful. And therefore the psalm says, I cling to you. I will do anything. I'll cling to you. I'll walk with you because you uphold me with your right hand. And morning by morning, I read this. I see what God's done for me. He continues to do for me practically, but also here. And most wonderfully, I know where I'm going. Even death is just like going to sleep for a Christian, as many of you know. Which is, wonderful.
That's incredible. Piyush, it's been amazing to kind of chat with you, and I'm sure you guys will have questions and comments you want to make to Piyush. Please come and chat to him at the end. I'm going to do a short talk in a moment, but please talk to him and ask more questions. If you've got questions about Hinduism, you've got questions about what it means to follow Jesus, Piyush loves good questions, but keep them on Christianity rather than your medical conditions. But shall we give Piyush a warm thank you? Thank you. Brilliant. So every night we're just then wrapping up the evening really by thinking a bit about something to do with Jesus. What we've heard how Jesus has transformed Piyush, but we want to think also then about, well, what's the relevance of Jesus for me? And Piyush was sharing loads of that, and we're just going to delve into a bit more. But on the flyers, you may have seen this kind of question that come up: Am I a good person? And we've been thinking a bit about that tonight. Piyush had the external kind of show of looking like a good person, a successful person, someone who had it all together. But I wonder if you ever thought that question about yourself. Am I a good person? I wonder if you've considered that. I remember a few years back going into a school and asking a bunch of kids there, when you look out at the world and you see the world that your parents left you and your grandparents left you, do you think, wow, this is an incredible world, I just absolutely love it? Is that what you think of the world? And it's a slightly loaded question. And they came back without fail, all saying, actually, no, we think life's pretty rotten, and the world we've got is not so good. It's pretty dark out there. I might hold this one because it's quite short. And so they came back with that. And so I said to them, well, what do you think then is wrong with the world? What are the issues with the world? And they came back with loads of different ideas, things like pollution, politics, war, And they also said Manchester United, which I thought it was probably the most profound statement that anyone made that night, that day, sorry. And so they covered lots of things. And I said to them, well, okay, we heard all those things, but what's the common denominator here? What's the common denominator in all of these different things? And the answer came back, is people. You know, who causes pollution? People. Who's involved in politics? People. They are really people. Yes, they are. Yes, it's people. Who plays Man United? People. It's people that seem to be the problem. There was a few years ago, there was a terrible film, Lego film, and Emmett was this guy, and he sang this song, Everything is Awesome, and it's a really annoying tune. Why? Because one, the tune is annoying, but also because the words, everything is not always awesome, as we know. And when we're honest and we look out the world, I think loads more people right now are just, as it always has been the case, but even more now, are just noting that the world is just a mess. And everything we look at, just everything seems to be exposed constantly. The fraud, the mess out there. You know, you think about politics and everyone's constantly attacking politicians because no one seems to be trustworthy. How can we trust anyone? It seems to be a right mess. You can't trust big finance because they're this greedy corporate Gordon Gekko stealing all the cash prizes, and life is tough. There's loads of people who have written about this kind of stuff. Hollywood at various times in the past years has been exposed to the hashtag Me Too movement and the way that women have been treated. Then there's all the big tech and the surveillance capitalism, if you want to call it this technical word, and all the problems of how big tech is just manipulating us and nudging us constantly into how to live and what to do. And if you ever saw that film with about James Bond and Zorro and Mayday, maybe you look back and think their aim was to blow up Silicon Valley, and you think, why James Bond? Why didn't you just stop yourself from stopping them doing that? But they didn't. Anyway, it's letdown after letdown after letdown in our world. And I think it's not just those school kids I was chatting to, but all of us note that there's something really wrong with the world. There doesn't seem to be that many good people out there. So here's a little thought experiment. Supposing tonight, instead of going home, we all thought, well, we're going to stick around here. There's plenty of cake. We'll stick around here all night and we'll try and thrash out together what is wrong with this world. Here's the question. Do you think that by the end of the evening or the morning, because we'd be spending all night here, do you suppose by the end of that morning you would find that in this room there are some people who are a bit jealous, some people who are selfish, some people who are proud? I reckon you would. I reckon I would find that as well. Well, supposing if you said to yourself, well, listen, the world out there is a mess, the people in here are a mess. Tonight I'm going to go home to my lovely rural idyll here in the Shire of Bedford, and I'm going to gather my family together, extended family and all, and we're going to lock ourselves in my home tonight, and we're going to consider what is wrong with this world. Do you suppose that by the end of the night you may find that some people in your family are jealous, some people are selfish, some people are proud? I suspect so. We find it every Christmas, don't we, when we have family gatherings? We know it. So supposing instead you thought, well, I'm going to be like Nutkin from Peter Rabbit, and I'm just going to go climb a tree and be mad and do that and spend the night in a tree, and I'm just going to consider to myself what is wrong with this world. And I say to myself that the world's a mess, the people in this church, they're all a mess, the people in my family, they're a mess, and you're there left with your own thoughts. Do you suppose that by the end of that night, by the morning when it comes, that you might discover that actually sometimes in your life you see there's jealousy and there's clear pride and there's selfishness? I think you would discover that. None of us like to admit it, but I think we would discover that. Well, there was a guy who was writing in the Bible that Piyush has been talking about, and this is about 2,700 years ago, so this is ancient stuff, but it's absolutely relevant to right now where we're at. And this guy called Isaiah was someone who was like a spokesman for God, and God had asked him to go and speak to his people Israel and basically challenge them over the way that they had been living, because they're, surprise, surprise, were people back then who were jealous and people who were selfish and people who were proud. And so Isaiah goes to all these people and he starts issuing all these woes to people. It wasn't that he was riding a horse and he's going, whoa, whoa. It was nothing like that. But he was speaking to the people and saying, woe to you because of this. Woe to you because of that. Your jealousy, your selfishness, your pride. And when he was woeing these people, it was a kind of more of a Shakespearean kind of woe. You know, when it happens in Shakespeare, it's this kind of, alas, how sad it is. You know, I'm gutted for you. It's that kind of thing. And he was saying that I've got this deep regret for you because you're living in these jealous and selfish and proud ways. And Isaiah was saying that this is a highway to hell. You don't want to carry on down this route. It's madness. And so he issues all these woes to people. And then in the very next chapter, that happens in Isaiah chapter 5, so 2,700 years ago. And then in the very next chapter, something profound happens to Isaiah. He comes, if you like, face to face with Jesus. In fact, in one of the biographies about Jesus, in John's biography, John says when Isaiah writes this bit I'm just about to read to us, John was writing about Jesus. So Isaiah gets this encounter with Jesus. He sees Jesus face to face. And listen to what happens. It's only these 7 short verses or sections. So Isaiah writes, in the year that King Uzziah died, i.e. this took place in history, I saw the Lord sitting upon a throne. That's the Lord Jesus sitting upon a throne, high and lifted up, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Above him stood the seraphim. That's an angel, not Nick Angel or Sarah Angel, one of those angels, one of the proper angels of the wings and stuff. Above him stood the seraphim. Each had 6 wings, with 2 he covered his face, with 2 he covered his feet, and with 2 he flew. And one called to another and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. And the foundations of the threshold shook at the voice of him who called, and the house was filled with smoke. And I said, Woe is me, for I am lost. For I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips. For my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. Then one of the seraphim flew to me, having in his hand a burning coal that he had taken with tongs from the altar. And he touched my mouth and said, Behold, this has touched your lips. Your guilt is taken away, and your sin atoned for. So I love it here with Isaiah, because he's been woeing all these people, and now he has this face-to-face encounter with Jesus, the King of the universe, the rightful owner, ruler, creator of it all. And he sees him and he says, my eyes have seen the King. And all of a sudden, the woeing has really gone from other people. He knows there are problems out there, as we all do. There's massive problems out there. But all of a sudden, as Isaiah sees Jesus, he starts pointing the finger at himself and says, Woe is me. I'm the one who's stuffed. And he's absolutely terrified by what he sees, because he sees that Jesus is this good, beautiful, pure King. And he sees himself in that light, and he realises that he's the one with the issues. And all of a sudden, he realises that he's got more hang-ups than an art gallery, and he's got more baggage than Heathrow Terminal 5. He just realises, I'm the one with the problem. And I wonder when we hear that, and when we hear the Bible say, actually, we're like Isaiah, actually the woe's got to come to us as well, because there's issues going on in here just as much as there's issues going on out there. I think we end up a bit like a 1980s car alarm, which just sounds off at the slight hint of anything. And I think we get kind of so sensitive when we hear this stuff that actually I'm the one with the problem, because we want to appear like Piyush wanted to appear. We want to appear like we've got it together externally, that people think we're sorted. And yet we get twitchy and tetchy and itchy in our ears, and we just don't like it when we actually realise and come face to face with Jesus. There's a Canadian psychologist, he's Lebanese origins, he's got these brilliant blue eyes, he's got a crazily good name, Gad Saad. Anyway, what a name. But Gad Saad, he talks about how, he's not a Christian, but he talks about how we all, as human beings, suffer from this thing called OPS, which is ostrich parasitic syndrome. This viral contagion thing where we love to just bury our heads in the sand and not deal with reality. And I think so often that is what happens when we look out at the world, we see that, that's very, very real and obvious, but ourselves, we don't like to see it. Growing up, we used to have a West Highland White Terrier, and he was a brilliant dog called Sam. We lived in the Midlands at the time, and I was actually a genuine Brummie at the time, so I was like, hello, my name's Martin, and I genuinely spoke like that, and it got beaten out on me when I went down south. Anyway, but we had this little dog called Sam, West Highland White Terrier, and he looked incredible, a pure, lovely looking dog. And then, being in the West Midlands, we had snow, which we don't get down in Eastbourne where I live much at all. And the snow came, and as we saw our dog running out there in the snow, all of a sudden, he didn't look like a West Highland White Terrier. He looked like he had some kind of liver issues, or he'd been smoking lots of cigarettes throughout the day. He was yellow. And I think often we see ourselves a bit like the West Highland White Terrier. We're all good because we compare ourselves with what's going on out there. But then actually the snow falls, the purity of Jesus comes into our lives. And actually we see ourselves not as we once did, and we see ourselves in not the good light that's there. And I think one of the interesting things is that Jesus, when he's speaking in a John's Gospel, he comes and he says in chapter 3, verse 19, he says, this is the verdict, talking about himself. He says, light, that's Jesus, light has come into this world, but people love darkness instead of light because their deeds are evil. And they're afraid to step into the light in case they will be exposed. And yet here is Isaiah face to face with Jesus, and he realises, I'm not the person I thought I was. And there's guilt, there's shame, a bit like Piyush was describing when he came face to face with his own sin. Another psychologist guy, this guy, Jonathan Haidt, it's all the psychologists tonight. He, in his book, The Happiness Hypothesis, I was going to be sarcastic there and say it's a real page turner, but actually it genuinely is. It's a really good book. He makes this interesting point. He's looking at lots of different beliefs and stuff, and he just makes this comment. He says, one of the most universal pieces of advice from across cultures and eras is that we're all hypocrites, and in our condemnation of others' hypocrisy, we only compound our own. So he says that we're very good at spotting the problems out there, but just like Jesus said, we're very good at spotting the specks in our brother's eyes and our sister's eyes, but we miss the whole huge 6-foot beam sticking out of our own. And sometimes we go, well, it's a mistake, and sometimes we do make genuine mistakes in our lives, for sure we do. But often we do things intentionally, and often we hurt the ones we love the most. And often we'll say, I don't know what came over me, but actually nothing really ever did come over you, it came out of you. And we say, well, the red mist descended, but it never really did descend, it ascended from our hearts. Jesus said, it's out of the abundance of the heart that someone speaks. And here Isaiah says that woe to me, for I am a man of unclean lips. So the reasons why we say stuff that doesn't help and hurts, the reason why we do stuff that doesn't help but hurts, is because of what's going on in our hearts. Now Isaiah recognises he's got a heart problem, as do we all. So he says, woe is me, for I am lost, for I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips. For my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. You know, Isaiah recognised there's only one person who's ever walked this planet, only one human being who's ever walked this planet who got things right, who wasn't a flagrant hypocrite. Only one person, and that is that King who is right there before him. He recognises he's not a hypocrite. And when you look at Jesus' life, if you've never looked at his life, please do read one of the biographies, or read all 4. They're incredible, because you start to see someone who's better than you could ever imagine. Someone who's not a hypocrite. Someone who actually said, love your enemies, pray for your enemies. And then when he's there, dying on that wooden cross that Piyush was talking about, what does he do? He prays for his enemies. He loves them. He says, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. Jesus is the only consistent one. And here Isaiah goes, we're all stuffed. In fact, if he'd been watching Dad's Army, he would have joined him with Private Fraser and said, we're doomed. But he hadn't been. But it's true. It's the situation we're in, we find ourselves in. But the Isaiah story doesn't end there, and nor does our story have to end there. It doesn't have to end at this place of just going, there's a mess out there, there's a mess in here, we're stuffed now and we're stuffed for all eternity. It doesn't have to end there, because this is what Isaiah does. He tells us how actually we can have our unclean lips made clean, how we can have our unclean hearts made clean. So how can that happen for us? We might want to go, God, well, can't you just turn a blind eye to the things I do wrong? Can't you just, it's not really that serious. Can't you just minimise it? Can't you just turn a blind eye to it? But he can't, because he's a God who's holy, holy, holy. He's a God who sees everything, and he can't lie. He can't deny what's real. And so he must deal with reality. He must deal with the way things actually are. And so he can't just turn a blind eye, because he hates all that's wrong. And he wants to get rid of that from our lives and from this world. So he won't just turn a blind eye to our sins and the things we do wrong. Maybe we think, well, I just clean myself up then. I know my heart's dodgy and I know I do stupid things. I just work harder, try harder, force myself. But we saw even last night, if those of you who are around from Emma who was speaking, that you might try all you want, but you cannot sort out your own heart. You know, if we learn anything from Lady Macbeth, it was that you cannot clean yourself up. No matter how much you try and get rid of that spot, it just will not go out. That stain of what we do wrong, it just won't go. No matter how hard we scrub, it just won't go. So what's the answer? Well, as we wrap up here, I think it's what Isaiah sees is the answer. Because there he is, recognizing his own state of heart and mind in life before King Jesus. And what he knows he needs is he needs a pardon from the king. He knows that every time he's done stuff wrong and said things wrong in his life to others, that ultimately it's wrong because it's wrong against the God of this universe. And he knows he needs that King, Jesus' pardon. And this is how this little bit of Isaiah chapter 6 ends. It says, "Then one of the seraphim flew to me, having in his hand a burning coal that he had taken with tongs from the altar." And if we're following the thought and train of Isaiah here, you'd think the angel's going to come along and he's going to scorch him and say, "Look what you've done." But look what happens. "And the angel," verse 7, "touched my mouth and said, 'Behold, this has touched your lips. Your guilt is taken away.'" And it's a really beautiful moment. He would have been absolutely trembling. He would have known, he would have seen that actually he's unclean. But the angel here tells him you can be clean. He says, "Look, I'm a man who is ruined," but he knows right now, as his angel comes, he can be restored. He says, "Look, I am lost," but he knows right now that the king has come to find him. And the king has come to find him because he wants to forgive him and he wants him to have a restored relationship with him. He wants his proud heart and his stubborn will put to flight. That's what he wants. And Isaiah's like, yeah, I need that. And the brilliant thing that we see happen in this story is that coal comes to him and it touches him on the lips. And what happens is the darkness of his life, that gets forgiven. It gets cleaned up so that he can know the Lord. You know that hot coal is taken from the altar. And this all takes place in this big old Jewish temple. And there's loads of things to say about it, but the big thing to say about it is that on that altar, animals were sacrificed as a picture of how we can be forgiven. That an innocent one gets sacrificed and dies in our place that we don't have to. And that is a coal from that fire. And Isaiah is being told that one innocent one is going to come and will die for you in your place, taking your sins upon himself. And you, if you trust him, you can have the touch of cleanness come into your life. And he must have been blown away. He was told, "Behold, this has touched your lips. Your guilt is taken away and your sin atoned for." And that is a picture, really, of what Jesus would come and do some 700 years later. He would come and he would die and he would rise for you, to forgive you, if you will have him and have his forgiveness. We've been thinking about how Jesus is this king who's highly exalted here, that Isaiah sees. He's so magnificent and I'm so bad. That's what he sees. What kind of king is Jesus? Is he a kind of king who's going to be a tyrant if you come and ask him to be the king of your life? You absolutely know that's not the case. He cannot be that. We're told in Isaiah, he is high and lifted up. And when Jesus came permanently as a human being some 2,000 years ago, the description of him as he goes to die is that he is high and lifted up. So his coronation as king is his being nailed to a cross. That's the kind of king he is for you. The king who loves you to pieces. Isaiah says, "Behold, this has touched your lips. Your guilt is taken away and your sin atoned for." And that's what Jesus offers you today. He offers to atone for your sin. That means to pay for it. He's done that. But he's there to offer you to be at one with him, to come and be united and forgiven. And that can't happen unless we ask him into our lives. So tonight, as in all the other nights this week, we're giving people the opportunity to do that, to say, yeah, Jesus, I know I need to be forgiven. I know it's not just the people out there who are a mess, but I am as well. I know I need your forgiveness. And it's to come and say thank you for what you've done. And it's to do what Piyush said, to ask him, will you be my Lord and Saviour now? And he will definitely do it. That's why he came for you, because he wants that for you. He wants the best for you now and for all eternity. So if you're at that place tonight where you'd like to do that, it's a huge, huge moment. But please pray with me if that's the kind of thing you want to do now. If you want Jesus to save you and forgive you and be your Lord forever. I'm going to say some words to God in prayer. And if you want to receive Jesus and his forgiveness tonight, just echo these words. Say these words in your own head and heart. And if you want to say out loud at the end, I'm going to say amen, which means let it be, or thumbs up, or yes, I agree. And so if you want to receive Jesus now, why not pray this? Let's pray. Father, tonight I realise that the problems of the world aren't just out there amongst everyone else. But the problem's in here, it's in my heart too. Father, I want to say sorry tonight. Sorry for my pride. And sorry for my selfishness. Sorry for my jealousy. Father, thank you so much that you see all this and yet you've loved me still. And you've given me Jesus, who died and rose again for me. And right now I ask that you would forgive me. You would touch my unclean lips and make them clean. And that you would give me Jesus as my King from now on in. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. If you pray that tonight, come and chat to me or chat to someone else. It doesn't matter. But I've got a little booklet which is there, it's in my bag, which I'd love to give you, which is about knowing God personally. And if you want to know what a journey is like to actually get to know him, then please come and ask me for one of those. I'd love to give one of those to you. But thank you ever so much for listening. I'm going to hand back to Tom.